Okay. Okay. Looks like people are streaming in, but I have, let me see if I can do this. So for those of you who are coming in, Maya's not here today. So G and I and Mindy are going to be handling this. However, none of us know really how to handle this backroom stuff, so you're going to have to bear with us here. Um, let's see. Okay, I see Vicky, Gia, Raksha. Oh my God, Raksha. That's me. Raksha, I know you. Okay. Ginger, Joyce, G, Patricia, Claire, Esther, Astria. Did I pronounce that right? Carol. Nice to meet you all. Hello. Renee, Vicky, Carol. Okay, now what we got to do is I got to figure out how to get you people on. Can people go to the chat? Let's see. Here's the chat. Can people go to the chat? Hi from France. Hello from Oxfordshire. Okay. So can anybody just tell me if you see me at all? Because I can't see you. So just anybody, just say anything that's anything. It says, yes, I can see you, Franco. Anybody. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's see. Gallery. Boy. Hi, Franco. Yes, we see you. Oh, good. At least you guys can see me. Arg, but I still need, okay, go for, no, I don't want that. Okay. So bear with me, people, because I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay. And, uh-oh, what did I do here? Chat. It looks perfect. We see you, but we do not appear on this format. Yeah, see, that's the thing. I guess I'm not supposed to see you guys. Is that what it entails now? Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Since I have no earthly idea what I'm doing, if I haven't said that already, is that G and Mindy were going to be asking me the questions, but I can't hear G. I can't see G. I can't hear Mindy. I can't see Mindy. So I guess it's just going to be me asking the questions to me. How do you guys feel about that? Just give me a couple of thumbs up, thumbs down. There's no other choice here, so I'm going to have to do it this way. So chime in, people. Just let me know you're cool with that. I mean, unless anybody want to give me some suggestions as to how I am supposed to bring on G. Oh, Vicky said fine. That's cool. Yes, it's perfect. Well, then that's it. I feel like we got some votes here for Esther. Carol. Everybody's giving me a thumbs up. Even G's giving me a thumbs up. Okay. All right. So what we'll do, since everybody is chiming in on the chat, is you can ask questions on the chat, but chances are I won't be able to get to them. But I will try to at least get them incorporated into the next Inner Flow Live. And by then, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Maya will be back, or that at least I will be trained on how to do this in case I have to do this on my own again in the future. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? So I'm going to give us a few more minutes just to, we're rolling, Carol says. Would you please talk about the timeline for Light Flash and 3 Days of Darkness? Okay. Um, I have to ask you this question because I was pronouncing it. Is it Gia or Yia? Can you give me the sort of phonetic in, pronunciation of that? But can I answer it? I'll give it my best because we have like about 34 questions, and I'm going to try to answer about a dozen of them. We did talk about the 3 days of darkness, light flashes, and those things in one of the previous Inner Flow lives, I believe. I say I believe because I'm not sure if it was an Inner Flow live discussion or if it was in one of the deep dive discussions that I did with a smaller group for those who are doing the online courses. Sounds like Gia. Oh, okay, Gia. Thank you, thank you, Claudia. Is it possible that that loved ones die when we change timelines? Well, that's a good question, Claudia, and I will again try to answer them. I want to be fair to the people that I want to be fair to the people that sent questions in advance, and we have some questions that we did not get to from at least one Inner Flow live before, and maybe two. So, but please bring them in. Please, if we don't get to them, please send them to Maya, and she will include those for the next Inner Flow live. And if we don't get them addressed, then we just keep rolling them up. You know what I mean? So like it wouldn't be more than a couple Inner Flow lives before we get to those questions. But I'll see what I can do. Okay. Raksha. It was a deep dive. Okay, thank you, Raksha. Raksha would know because Raksha Raksha goes to all of these. So thank you, Raksha. All right, so I feel like we're in good shape here. We have 23 people. I don't know how many RSVP'd, but I feel like in keeping with what we normally do, we will get started now. So thank you for all of you who took the time to come today on Saturday, wherever you are in whatever part of the world. And if you haven't put down like where you come, what part of the world you're coming from, that would be nice to just note that on the chat portion of this. Happy New Year. I believe that this is the first. Is it the first Inner Flow live? If it isn't, then happy Lunar New Year. How's that? Okay, since the beginning of the year, it's been a actually, now that I'm feeling into this, I believe that it was an Inner Flow live. So if I feel a little bit out of sorts, it's only because, like I said, I'm handling all of the things here today. Okay, so happy Lunar New Year for sure. And I know that a lot of you guys have had, oh, there you go, Virginia, DC. Okay, so I know that you guys, some of you guys have been talking in some of the posts in the community about things that are happening to you physically. And so I just wanted to make a quick note of that. Now, this isn't part of the questions. I give you that. This is just an observation that I made. And I don't know how many of you that are in this Inner Flow today, how many of you actually have had these sort of body sort of discomfort issues or emotional discomfort issues. And so I just want to kind of address that a little bit. It's it seems to be going around a bit. So bear with me. This will only be a few moments. I just wanted to tell you that we are. I don't know what the chatter is out there in the community, not in our community, but in the sort of the broader spiritual community in terms of what's happening here. But I will tell you that specifically to what I know and to what is relevant to the people in the community here is that I truly feel that many of those who are being drawn to this community are what I guess some other people would call light workers, but I call them I call you guys basically. I don't even know if I really have a name for this particular type of group, but we're children of the light, so to speak, And what I mean by that is that we carry a particular type of sort of responsibility in this ascension process. Now, everybody's role is going to be specific to them, and many of you guys don't even know what that means yet, because there hasn't been that kind of clarity yet, since many of you are just going through the sort of the I wouldn't say the beginning stages of the ascension process or the remembering process, but there's still that process to be had before you actually start to get a better sense of what your purpose is here. Now, that doesn't mean that some of you who aren't already doing some of the spiritual work, doesn't mean that your purpose that you're doing now is going to change much, but it could very well be at least enhanced significantly. And it could change over time. But why am I getting through all of that? The reason I'm talking about that is because right now in 2025, the energies that are coming in are extremely high 4D energies, and I would say that even 5D energies. Now people have been talking about 5D for a while, and I'm sure a lot of people have said that there are 5D energies already in here, and though that is true, what I mean by the energies coming in is that we have a lot of energies around us. We have even 6D energy and 7D and 8D energy and 9D energy in this space, but it's what type of energy is infiltrating, if you will, or filtering in to this 3D reality, and how much of it is integrating with us is the big question, or the questions, okay? So in 2024, a lot of 4D energy came in, and this was sort of low to middle range type of frequencies. And actually 4D energy had been coming in for almost a decade now, which was mostly lower frequency 4D energies. Now, I'm going to try to keep it simple because of the interest of time, but I do want to address this relative to what's happening now, because if it hasn't been impacting you yet, emotionally or physically, there's a very good chance that you will get impacted by this in some way, shape, or form. And some people call this sort of ascension symptoms. Okay, I would go with that for now. But so what happened is that towards the end of 2024, things got really pretty crazy. Okay, I mean, if you didn't notice it in both your individual lives as well as in the global consciousness, and what was happening was that these higher end 4D energies, which I refer to them as Christ consciousness energies, okay, which also are also referred to as divine feminine energies. So it's the divine feminine energies of the Christ consciousness, if that helps anybody out, all right? And so what that means is that a lot of awareness energy was coming in. This is the type of energy that comes in and kind of it sort of filters in or integrates with your grid system of your body, and starts pushing out some of this 3D energy that has been sort of stuck in the real depths of your grid system. And especially at the end of 2024, that energy was really coming in, plowing in through inside the grid system and pushing things up. And by the time we got into the first of this year, that 2024 4D energy was converting into more of a high 4D, low 5D energy, which involves what I call some God consciousness energy. And so this type of energy, and I'll explain some of this, because that question of God consciousness is part of the questions that were asked for this. But the God consciousness energies are a real integrative type of energy that pushes out whatever is left of these blockages that you have, but you may not be aware of, these 3D blockages. Okay, these types of blockages that won't allow your grid system to fully activate. And why is that important? Because most of you, as I said, I refer to you as the sort of the children of light, or some would say light seed people, or whatever. I don't really care what the name of the label is, but for most of you, you have a grid system that is activating or being activated right now in anticipation of the mass awakening of those of those beings that are here to graduate from this Earth School. So what happens is that you guys, many of you guys, are being activated right now because the surges of this new energy are so high that you guys act like a like a like a like a semiconductor, or what do you call it, a like a node in the grid system, so that when energy flows into the grid system of the entire planet, it goes into certain pockets and gets refiltered, if you will. It gets balanced and harmonized so that it can be spread out. No different than how it does with some of the landmarks around the world, like the pyramids or what have you, the monolithic temples or whatever sites that are out there all over the world. We also have a similar grid system arrangement so that we can receive energy and then redistribute it out into the grid system at large around us. And to do that, our grid system has to be integrated and upgraded at the same time. So all to say that for most of you who are receiving or experiencing, high anxiety or fear-based symptoms, or maybe even aches and pains of all types, whether they're in your lower extremities or your chakras, chances are pretty good that what you are experiencing is this integration of high 4D, low 5D energies that are, in a sense, purging and activating your grid system so that you can receive the higher surges that are going to be coming in 2025, be able to receive them and then redistribute that energy in a more harmonic way around your sort of wherever you are in the planet, so sort of around the region that you are. Okay. I personally have gone through this for some time now. For those of you who kind of know me a little bit more, like through the one-on-ones and stuff, I've been going through it for about 6 months. It can be pretty painful at times. It's unfortunately part of the process, and it could be exhausting, but it is part of the process. So if you're not feeling these things yet, you may not necessarily go through the same type of integration as those that are feeling them right now, and that's all right, because everybody has their own unique coding and they have their own responsibilities to the ascension process, and so you may not necessarily go through that type of experience like others, or your surges may come later on, especially around the lunar cycles. I believe we're heading into a year where there's going to be 6 supermoons, and they will come in stages of 3 cycles. And I believe the next one is coming up here soon. If it's not February, it's March. So anyway, that's it. I know I said I was going to keep that short, but I hope that helps people understand a little bit of what's going on, and also understand that the anxiety and those fear-based things that you're going through, don't take them personally, because a lot of you have done such a marvelous job of going through the courses and sort of reconfiguring your grid system so that you're vibing at a higher consciousness with positive streams of energy. All good, right? And then all of a sudden you get hit with this, and then you're feeling anxiety and you're tired and you're nervous and you're fearful. A lot of that energy is actually coming through the grid system of the planet and is coming into your sort of semiconductor grid system, and so you're getting that from the energies around you. Does that make sense? In other words, part of your role here is not just to receive this energy that's coming in from sort of the higher realms of consciousness, but it's also to take in some of the energies around you that are negative and being able to filter those back out in a positive way. So your grid system is sort of having double duty, and you're absorbing energies that are not necessarily yours. And so you're sitting there going, what's going on? Last week I was great, and this week I'm not. So understand that your grid system is handling a lot of energy that's not even maybe even yours. So don't take it personally. Just work through it. Now, if you want to know how to work through it in a way that might be helpful, I feel it's going to be helpful, is remember, especially with anxiety I talk about this in the coursework as well, that anxiety is an energy that is very similar to eagerness, like an eagerness, excitement energy that you would have, which that children would have, or even as an adult would have. And there's a whole thing about this that we talk about in terms of wordsmithing and changing frequencies of words and emotional vibrations. But this is a real simple thing. Anxiety is like eagerness. Okay. If you take away the label of the anxiety that you're feeling and just feel into the energy itself, it's going to feel like eagerness. Okay. And so you can use that eagerness, that sort of, whoa, that kind of energy to actually do something more, how should I say, more playful. Use it for a more playful, exciting way to kind of spike you up a little bit instead of allowing it to pull you down into the gutter, if that makes sense. Because it's really almost the same thing for those of you who deal with anxiety. Anxiety is kind of like it's like a kind of a feeling, but that same feeling can be like that. And I use this quite a bit because back in the day, long time ago, anxiety and depression were huge for me, and they're not anymore. And with anxiety in particular, I have dealt with it that way. So I know that wasn't, again, one of the wasn't on the series of questions, but I noticed a lot of people were talking about it. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So I'm going to go on to the very first question of this inner flow. So the first question was, when I find my truth, how can I hold on to my own truth when I'm surrounded by beliefs that say the opposite and want to push me back into fear? So for those of you who haven't yet done the courses, whether with me or online, let me explain a real simple truth that I was shown and that I subscribe to as part of the teachings. One of the things that we have to almost from the get-go, at least if you desire to try to play with the way that the inner child plays, or the way in terms of the teachings of the inner child, is that you have to accept the at least the possibility. But for now, let's just go with the whole thing. Accept that this reality is a simulation. Okay, it's a game. And as I've mentioned this before, you don't have to take my word on it. There's a lot of physicists that are actually looking at this quite intensely. And I know for a fact that there is already a model and a mathematical equation for this. So what, right? Well, in the 3D world, that means a lot, because if you can do that, then it pretty much takes a belief of something, a hypothesis of something in sciences, and creates it into a fact. Okay, so if you can go with that we're in a simulation, we're in a game, okay, then you can start to play with the game in the simple rules that it has. And there are 4 golden rules, and we're not going to get into all of that, but it is all in the courses. If for you guys who have taken the course or are considered taking the courses online, what I'm getting at is this: if you understand that this is a game, then, and you follow just the 4 basic golden rules of the game, then you will understand that the belief systems that you have been given through social conditioning, whether those are through your family or through society or through religious institutions or whatever, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Okay, that those are all part of a programming of the game. In other words, they're just conditions, belief systems that they were given to you in order for you to forget. Okay, there's a part of the 4 golden rules that talks about how this game is actually exists within the scope of contrast. Now, that's not a shocker to anybody. It shouldn't be. This is like something that a lot of people talk about in terms of contrast. But what I talk about in terms of contrast within the courses is that you have to look at contrast not just as the obvious contrast, right? Day, night, left, right, up, down, those kind of things. You have to look at what may be hidden as a clue, if you will, because this is a game. So, if anybody's played Clue, you got to play it like that. Then you can look at the clue in terms of what does what is the social condition or belief system that you are being told to subscribe to? What is it telling you? And if it makes sense, this is the thing that I always tell people. If it makes sense to you, okay, meaning that you can actually kind of sit there and go, yeah, all right, kind of feel into your intuition, your gut feeling, and you go, yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. All right. Okay, if it makes sense to you, then go with it. All right. But unfortunately, with a lot of the things that we've been taught in the belief systems, things don't really make a lot of sense. All right. And so you have to look at the contrast of what what you're being shown. That's where I'm getting at with all this. Okay. It's the contrast of whatever that you're being shown in terms of your belief systems. All right. You will normally find the truth in that makes sense to you. Okay. And if it makes sense to you looking at it from the contrast, which is part of the rules of this game, which everybody knows we're in the school of contrast, it all seems to make sense that you would find your truth in that contrasting opinion. And so you don't have to be concerned with what the conditions are that you are being taught in this game, because the game is the game. You're supposed to try to decipher that portion of it so you can find the truth. The other thing that I will tell you real quickly is that we talk a lot about supporting actors and who's part of the simulation and who's not. Okay, and in the interest of time, all I'm going to tell you that everything in the simulation is basically there to support you. Okay, but it's supposed to be there as a very challenging game of riddles and clues so that you can figure out what makes sense to you again in terms of your truth. Once it makes sense to you, follow that, because the game is set up for you to be distracted with the contrast of everything that you know innately exists as truth. So for me, if you follow or you start to be conflicted by truths from outside, then you know you're too much into the 3D piece of your reality. Okay? The outside world is just an illusion. You have to focus on what is happening internally in terms of the process that you're going through of awakening. If you get stuck in the outside belief systems and the contrast of the belief systems, then you are stuck still in 3D, at least from the standpoint that you are too committed to the distractions of the outside world. So try to avoid that, which we'll talk about this more maybe in a few questions down the road. But if it makes sense to you and you can see it from the contrast and it's answering questions within you that satisfy your sense for truth, then you're in good shape. Don't worry about everybody else's belief systems outside, because as you can see, they haven't really been working very well as a whole. Okay, so ideally, that answers that. Okay, as I always do, yay for me. Okay, so here we go. Question number 2. How can one distinguish between genuine spiritual awakening and self-delusion? So I thought actually this would probably be something that would be coming down the road a little bit in a few questions, but this is actually going to segue perfectly to what I just said, and I'm going to keep this one really, really short. And that is that there's a section in the book that I wrote, The Closet Spiritualist, that talks about the awakening stages that we go through. And one of those stages is called the delusional stage, okay? And the delusional stage is when you start to get so much information. I mean, you're like going gangbusters. You're absorbing. And then when you get to a certain level of awareness because of it, or knowingness from it, if you start to apply your spiritual truths, here again, to your 3D world, to try to fix your 3D world, then you know you have stepped into somewhat of a delusional stage. Now, there are all sorts, because I don't have very specifics, I don't have a very specific idea what the question is trying to aim at. I'm just going to be very general here, because there are all different forms of delusion, okay? But I'm just talking about how when you get to a certain level of awareness or a certain desire of to have a certain type of okay, I guess let's say it again, awareness of your 3D spirituality, when you when you get to a certain level and you start to try to apply that by either addressing problems in the world or trying to change people, to see you, to see you at the very least, to see you, if not to see themselves differently, in the sense of trying to fix them. Okay, then you are likely a bit delusional from the standpoint that you are addressing your spiritual growth through 3D solutions. In other, so what's happening a lot in the spiritual realms, okay, in the community, okay, not in the realms, but in the spiritual community, is that you'll see a lot of people addressing their belief systems, their enlightenment, if you will, their awakening by addressing dark nights of the soul, or healing the inner child, or things of that nature, or trying to solve world problems necessarily with their spiritual belief systems. Remember, the outside world is a game. This 3D game is not here to be fixed. This 3D game is here for you to play in, to try to figure out. It's the game of forgetfulness that converted itself into remembering. Now we're at that stage of the higher levels of this game where we're trying to use the game to remember who we are. But to remember who we are, it doesn't matter what's happening in the game, okay? Our focus is on us. And so when you start to focus on the issues of the world and get consumed by them, then you've lost your focus on what you came here to do, which was to remember that you're in a game that is a dream state game. Wake up out of it, or remember, and then once you remember, the whole game starts to dissolve in its essence. That's when you have 5D integration or oneness, okay? When everything starts to collapse, all the games start to collapse on top of each other because the game has been solved, okay? Ideally, that helps to address that. I mean, there are other delusional things like people who feel that their way is the only way. Now, I'm going to say something. A couple of inner flows before, I did say that this way was the way that I would highly recommend using, because it's the way, meaning these teachings of the inner child, because these are teachings that have been taught by so many other teachers all over the world in ancient times, okay? From Yeshua to Buddha to Taoism, you name it. This is a very common practice. It's not my way. It is the way of the child, okay? And it's, why is that such a cool way to do it, and probably the best way, if not the way to do it, is because it's the simplest way. It is the simplest way for us to resolve all of the sort of the illusions or delusions or the traumas or the dramas that we believe we have to bring with us in order to solve them and then move on in ascension purposes. It's not, okay? The way is really simple. A child simplifies things so easily that you could literally just let go of the things that you have experienced, the dramas and the traumas, in order to focus on the fact that they got you here and what to do now in your remembering process. So there's another kind of delusion, okay? I also really believe that anything that has to do with somebody saying, I am the leader, no, that doesn't work that way, okay? We are all here collectively to play together, to raise consciousness, and once we do, we come to realize that we are all one anyway. Integratively as consciousness, we're all one. Not one being here on this planet is meant to be followed in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so, all right, I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent. There's just a lot of different ways of defining this delusion that I just wanted to address it in the best way that I could for the person who was asking the question. How do you define God consciousness, and how can individuals cultivate it into their daily lives? Okay, so for those of you who haven't read my book, I do talk about God consciousness a lot. And in fact, in a lot of interviews now that I'm doing, I'm talking about God consciousness. And I want to make a real simple sort of delineation between God consciousness and Christ consciousness and Buddha consciousness and all these consciousnesses, okay? Just for people to help them understand at least where I'm coming from, okay? So I have often said the Christ consciousness here right now is very similar, or can be said, is the divine feminine energies. Okay, so what I mean by that is this: Christ consciousness is a level of awareness, of a consciousness awareness that we evolve into when we are in the awakening process. Okay, so what does that mean, Franco? Okay, so what I mean by that is this: the biggest frequency that you can pick up to use to help you to really blow this game out of the water, okay, despite what anybody else might be telling you in terms of, if you pick up the frequencies of love or the frequencies of joy, the weak frequencies of forgiveness, all of those are great, okay, but the greatest frequency that you can acquire, not acquire, but tap into and grow it right away and make a huge fundamental difference in your world is the frequency of awareness. Okay, awareness is what started this whole thing a gazillion years ago, when all there was just energy fields and nothing else. Okay, and where did those energy fields come from? To be honest with you, I have no connectiveness to that. All I know is there's an energy field, and then there's this thing called the abyss, which is kind of like an energy field, but it doesn't have this ability at that point to yet achieve what's called awareness, consciousness. Okay, but we won't go into that right now. All I wanted to say is that that's fundamentally the biggest thing. So what does this have to do with God consciousness? What God consciousness is 5D consciousness. So what? 5D consciousness is when you not only are aware that you are a balanced consciousness of divine masculine, feminine, and child. Okay, there's this huge fundamental awakening or remembrance to those three frequencies. That's what's called Christ consciousness, okay, or Buddha consciousness, and I believe there's a couple other variations to that. But last year at this time, the grid system of the planet was activated by Christ consciousness energies that came into the grid system through various entry points, one of which was the pyramids in Egypt. Okay, and they activated the feminine energies of the Christ consciousness. Now, for people who really want to dig into that a little bit more, there are books about this, I believe. I don't know where they are, but I do know one, and that's the Sophia codes. Okay, you can look at that and read into that more. I have not read that book in its entirety, but I know that it does talk about that a little bit in terms of the feminine energies of the Christ consciousness. Okay, so that's what came in last year. This year, it's the child energies of the Christ consciousness that is really streaming in big time. Okay, then I believe very strongly that next year, to complete the trilogy, it's going to be the divine masculine energies that will kind of put a nice bow to the whole thing when it's all done. But what does this have to do with God consciousness? Christ consciousness is the awareness. It's the actual awareness that we start to embody in ourselves to balance our way in which we view this world, ourselves in this world. I got to put it in that order, okay? In other words, we embody those energies. We start to play with those energies and become those energies. And for those of you who have taken the course, whether it's directly with me or online, I talk a lot about this. Because you have to embody these frequencies. It's not just enough to go, oh yeah, cool, check. I know these frequencies, they're pretty straightforward. Okay, and by the way, these are not the frequencies that like in that others would talk about, like in the Sophia codes, that talks about like Kuan Yin and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary. That's a whole different set of category of frequencies. What I'm talking about is what are the frequencies that we have within ourselves that we need to activate the codes that are being brought into us that will allow us to really live in the life and frequency of the divine feminine. And I am talking about everybody, not just men, not just women, but men as well. Okay. It just so happens that mostly women are the ones that right now are being activated for those particular types of divine feminine frequencies that are activating them into a state of remembrance. Okay. And that's intentional. That's intentional because of where the planet is right now. For those of you who may not be aware, but the planet is overwhelmingly dominated by masculinity energy. And I can say it's divine, but it's been, if nothing, it's distorted divine masculine. But there's a lot of distorted divine feminine energy too. So that part of the Christ consciousness is what's streaming in right now. It's the awareness of the fact that we have these divine feminine frequencies. They're being activated, and they're causing a lot of people, and a lot of women in particular right now, to start remembering who they are and the beautiful powers of creation that they possess, because creation is the name of the game here. 5D is all about creation. Okay, so in order for us to move into a new reality, those codes have to be activated. And it's coming through primarily through women right now, but men are also carrying the divine feminine energies, and they will also be activated down the road. But for right now, mostly men are being activated with the divine masculine energies to bring balance to the divine feminine in terms of the energies that they receive. So that's Christ consciousness. That's what's happening right now. This isn't going to take 100 years to happen. This is going to be pretty lickety fast, okay? The God consciousness energies of 5D is where you have already embodied all of this information. You already are starting to integrate with it, feel through them, and you start to live your life within the frequencies of them. When you start to live your life within the balanced frequencies of the masculine, divine feminine, and the divine child, okay, then you have achieved God consciousness energies, which means that the next thing that happens, it's not like a simultaneous thing. It's kind of like it happens all at the same time. So the higher your consciousness is rising, the more integrated these frequencies are getting with each other. The more they integrate with each other, the more codes they're activating. The more codes they're activating, you start to integrate in a very empathic, telepathic way, which we've talked about in the past, and you start to become one. You become one consciousness. Even though you're individual, you'll still be able to experience the collectiveness of consciousness as one. Okay, that's a real complicated and simple discussion that we would have to have down the road about 5D, God consciousness energy. But right now, what I would tell whoever asked that question is focus on the 4D energies of Christ consciousness. Focus on what is it that you need to know about yourself, whether you're a female or a male, about the feminine energies of the Christ consciousness, which is flooding the system right now. And what role do you feel, or what frequencies do you feel you relate to most? Because that's what I tell people. Pick the frequencies that you feel you can tackle right now, and there are a lot of frequencies. Again, in the stuff that I cover in the coursework, there's at least 50 frequencies of the divine feminine. Take a handful of them, start playing with them, start integrating with them, start becoming them. Become them. You gotta become them. Okay. I just recently had an opportunity to really give myself some time to really integrate with a lot of divine feminine energy, and it is incredible. It's insanely beautiful, and I've already been integrating with divine femininity energy for quite some time, balancing that with the divine masculine, balancing that with the divine child is the trilogy of what I call the Holy Grail. Okay, so applying it into or cultivating it on a daily basis is embracing what it is, integrating with it, and becoming it. And becoming it means play with it, play with the frequencies. They're not that difficult. They're not difficult to understand. You just have to be actively doing this every day, because it will raise your consciousness. Okay, so that's it. For those of you who want to know, we are on question 4 All right. And what time is it? It's 1:45. Okay. Okay. Everybody ready to go? We're going to go to number 4 here. All right. So can you explain the connection between daydreaming and meditation in your spiritual practice? Super duper easy. Okay. This is where the child energies or frequencies are huge. Okay. I do not subscribe. Not that I don't say that this isn't helpful. Okay. So I don't want to get into a discussion about the pros and cons of meditation. Okay. Back in the day, I meditated 7, 8 hours a day. Okay. I mean, literally pretty much every day. And what I got from it was some good stuff, but it wasn't like my life changed dramatically because of it. So I'm not saying that you should give up meditation, but I'm going to change the way meditation is defined. Okay. Because for me, meditation is visualization or imagination. I'm just that simple. Now, again, I get into more of this discussion on how to use this within the 4 golden rules of this game that are in the course. But I will just tell you this, okay? We are meditating all the time, if you want to call it that, because we're visualizing all the time. We are using our five senses, our eyes in the 3D world, to do open eye meditation. Okay, to me, that is the most productive way to meditate, if you want to call it that, is to constantly be interacting with this 3D world and using the landscape of this 3D world to allow you to continue to reinforce the reality that you're in. Okay, and visualizing more of it, or imagining something different. Okay, you see, the space where we meditate is often called the still point. Okay, and the still point is often referred as the stillness. And as I've talked about in many interviews and in the courses and in other things, the mind is not meant to be still. It's not meant to be still. All right. And if that's your goal, well, bravo. I mean, that's a lot of work. Okay. It's a lot. Okay. It doesn't mean that at some point the stillness of the mind isn't the goal, but that to me is like trying to run a marathon when you haven't even started to walk yet. And to me, it's not needed for what we're here to do with 3, 4, and 5D. Okay. So what does that mean? It means that in this realm, 5D, remember 5D is the creation dimension. Okay. Creation. How do you create? Well, you create through imagination. So what kind of things help with imagination? One of the things that I tell people is daydreaming, using the events around you to start creating a world in your mind that you would like to see, or scenarios of things that you would like to see. The problem is that in our society, we tell people that daydreaming is not productive to the 3D world. Probably not to the 3D world, but if you want to go into 4 and 5 and 6D, is very productive for that. Okay. So daydreaming, in my opinion, is a very good thing, especially if you're intentional about it, and especially if you can come at it from the standpoint of knowing who you are as a creator and what you're doing it for, so that you can create new frequencies that ultimately you will be able to filter into this reality as consciousness rises. So again, how I implement meditation is that I tell people to imagine and to daydream as much as possible. It doesn't mean that you get lost in your daydreams all day long and you don't get any of your 3D stuff done, but don't hesitate to be intentional about your daydreaming. That's the big thing. Most people, if they daydream, they don't even know they're daydreaming. They're not very intentional about it, and they certainly don't tell people about it, because that oftentimes gets them into some kind of trouble. But meditation is, to me, is not about sitting there and trying to still your mind. It's about at the very least, keep doing open eye visualization techniques, if you want to call it. I mean, we're doing it all the time. We're doing it right now, people. Right now, you are visualizing, maybe daydreaming, and you're creating on the spot. You just don't know it, and you certainly don't know how it all comes together. And the process is really simple. You're already doing it, but how do you do it intentionally is still a pretty easy process by daydreaming. At least that's one aspect of it. Okay. Okay. So, all right. That was pretty fast. Ideally, I got to that one for whomever asked the question. Question number 5. What are the most common misconceptions about spirituality that you encounter in my work? The most common misconception is that it's woo-woo. The most common misconception that I get that I come across from people that I bump into in other discussions or other circumstances is that it's woo-woo, that it has no real practicality to it, that it is that in some way, shape, or form, if it's not woo-woo, it's something you shouldn't play with because it gets into things like negative energy and black magic and demonicness and cults and all sorts of things. And I've been talking a little bit about those things in previous inner flows because though there is a little bit of truth in that, I'm not going to deny it because there is part of the game is that there's a challenge to that. As we start rising in consciousness, we start to become very mystical because that is who we are. Mysticism is just another way of describing our natural abilities to do things outside of 3D world. Okay, outside of 3D world, science is sort of the name that we give mysticism in our 3D world right now. Okay, so but we become very mystical, and people often equate that with the darker forces. Okay, and if anybody knows a lot about what I've talked about with darker forces, I don't subscribe to that for the most part because I have been shown that darker forces in terms of like satanic stuff and all that, those are 3D those are 3D programs inside the game. They don't exist outside of the game, but they still exist in 3D, and so we have to address them. But if you address them as a program versus something that's so high and mighty supernatural, you can really deal with it much easier within the context of how do you delete a program. Okay, but I get all these kind of misconceptions, that especially when it comes to like how spirituality is not connected with the 3D world and how it tends to distract people into becoming disconnected with others. Those things are true because spirituality is meant to help you remember who you are. And if you do that, you're going to realize that this game is, again, an illusion. And therefore, some of those things, disconnections and stuff, they do occur. And we talk about that in one of the golden rules. It is probably the most difficult of the golden rules of this reality or this game is that there is a fair amount of disconnecting that happens because, again, it's a dream. It's a game. So you don't stay connected to any dream that you have, right? When you have one at night, it's real and it feels real and the people are there and they feel real. But when you wake up, you wake up. Many people who have had NDEs talk about the fact that this is not a real reality. It's a simulation. It's a game. But in terms of how people apply it or how they view spirituality, that's a lot of the misconceptions that I seem to get is the practicality of it and the fact that it doesn't seem to subscribe to a lot of the norms or social conditions that we've been taught, but that's because most of what we've been taught is part of the illusion. So, okay. So, number 6, how can individuals balance spiritual growth with practical everyday responsibilities? There's this sense that spiritual growth in some way or another has to be in some level. There's a sense that it can't apply nicely with practicality. It just depends again on what you mean by practicality. If you're trying to take your spiritual belief systems and apply them nice and neatly into the world of your 3D life, there's going to be some times where those two things are going to contradict each other. But overall, it should actually benefit you to use your spiritual truths and belief systems, again, depending on what they are, to your 3D world. For instance, if you were to apply your awareness of who you are as a divine spiritual being, as I would put it straightforward, as a God, okay, and understand that you have by default the controls of this game, and understand that this game is really being controlled or conducted within what's called a command center, which is also the stillness. If you can just take the simple principles of what I'm talking about, now this isn't woo-woo stuff. This is very practical, okay? And start applying the frequencies of the divine feminine and the frequencies of the divine child and some of these other frequencies that we talk about, the four essences of divinity and the 12 frequencies of your spiritual armor. If you apply those things, you change your world, because you are defining your world from a love, joy-based reality that you are now in, because all your life you've been in a fear-based reality, okay? You start to change things in terms of how you see the world, how you emote your energy to others. And because the game is wired to you, if you start to do that and apply all of these coding system, all these sort of coding programs into your daily life, you change everything. You change your relationships with others and yourself, and you change the way that life is coming at you from other people in your game who are reflecting the negative energies that you have been living in all your life, and your positive energies will always override the negative energies as long as you are applying them internally. You have the ability to override and delete everything in your system, your game, in your life. Anything from, again, personal relationships. But here again, I want to stress that the number one personal relationship that you must focus on is yourself. Okay? Because if you understand that this is a game, you'll understand why you are priority number one. Okay? And all of these frequencies, if you adopt them, you will blow open a new reality for you, okay, in terms of your friendships, your families, illnesses that you have, in terms of what you desire, in terms of love and joy and money and whatever. You have the means. That's actually called mind alchemy. That's where we're going with 5D consciousness, is the alchemistic ability to change things, but you have to do them from the inside out. You have to know how to embody these codes of the frequencies that we were just talking about. Okay, sounds like a lot of work, but it really isn't. Okay, it's only work in the sense that you have to actually do this religiously. No pun intended. Okay, so there is no real balance here. In fact, if anything, there's a very seismic imbalance right now going on in this world. Okay, we are being taught to believe that everything that we have been raised to understand and accept, that somehow that's the normal. Okay, well, come on, that's not the normal. All right, it never has been the normal. So if we're trying to balance it with the abnormal, yeah, you're going to run into problems. If you make spirituality and these very practical, very simple ways of looking at yourself in life and understanding that this is a game and how to master the game, okay? If you do that, you're going to rock your world. You're going to rock not only your world, but it has ripple effects with everybody else who's playing their game. And we talk about this again on the online courses, the law of entanglement and how parallel realities work. You rock everything. This is how the grid system gets reactivated and brings in these energies that ultimately lead to 5D worlds, okay? So ideally, the moral of the story is that you're not trying to balance it with the abnormalities of this world, because the world right now as it stands is extraordinarily abnormally functioning right now. Make spirituality and the way that you're using them, at least through the way of the inner child, Make that your new normal, and you will change your reality in ways in which many of the great teachers have told us that could happen. You will literally bring heaven on earth to this planet, which is exactly what is required and why you're here, why you are here, is to do that in your life with you, as well as how you do it and how you interact and exchange that energy with those in this community, as well as those outside of this community. Okay, so ideally, that's what I got for you right now. I could talk about this forever, but I have to move on. So we're going to talk about number 7. Okay. In what ways do you feel traditional religious teachings align with your spiritual insights? Okay. Oh, all right. So here's the thing. I can't, I'm not going to be able to be ultra specific about the religious teachings around the world, because I'm not an expert in the religious teachings around the world. But here's what I can tell you, okay? Because I've kind of already alluded to this before. And if anybody's kind of looked at some of my interviews, like lately I've done a couple interviews with a Taoist master, then I've done interviews with other people. Some of my earlier interviews were with some very Christian-like interviewers. Okay, here's the thing. If you're going to ask, just in general, I love the question. If you're going to ask that question, I'm going to answer it this way, okay? If you're talking about the religious teachings and the way that they have been interpreted in modern day, and when I mean modern day, I'm not talking about in the last 100 years. I'm going to stretch the umbrella here, and I'm going to go back probably maybe say about at least 1,000 years, okay? No, that's not even fair. We got to go back a couple thousand years, okay? For people, here's the fundamental thing that is just in some ways, here's that word, doesn't make sense, okay, to me, all right? If you're going to look at religion, let's look at religions, okay? If you're going to follow religions and make a comparison or contrast to, like, say, the teachings that I have, again, the way of the inner child is really the way as taught by the child. The way is it's a philosophy, if you will, and it's a philosophy. Let's just call it a philosophy for now, okay? And it aligns itself with some aspects of Buddhism. It aligns itself very nicely, according to some of the Taoist masters that I've been interviewed by, with Taoism. It aligns itself with early Christianity, okay? Because in early Christianity, before it was called Christianity, I guess what I heard later on was that it was called the Way. It was called the Way. That's what it was before it became Christianity, all right? And Taoism is actually the Way, okay? That's what it's interpreted as, the Way, all right? What I'm trying to get at is that every religion has a fundamental series or foundations of truth. And if you really, really desire to know the truth, as these religions were originally designed to sort of emote or teach or whatever, you have to go to some of the most ancient of their writings, some of the oldest documents that you can have, okay? Because if you look at the old documents before they were actually edited, much of what I talk about in terms of who we are, what we are capable of doing, is in there. It's in there. I know it's in there in the very, very, very early writings of Christianity, okay? Before it became a sort of a doctrine in the Bible, because the Bible was something that didn't happen until 300 plus or so BC, AD. Okay, but even the Judeo religion and philosophies of Buddhism and Taoism, they all talk about the simplicity of life, of who we are, okay, of what we are in terms of divine spiritual beings, being able to master this reality that we have, that we call life. It's very, very simple. And the simplicity of the child, the way in which to do this, don't overcomplicate it. It's not supposed to be complicated. But if you take out factors such as you are a divine being, otherwise known as God, then you are going to start screwing things up. If you start to look at this reality from the delusions of other people, primarily men who have written most of the edited versions of all these sacred documents, then you are going to lose a significant portion of who you are as a divine being. But if you go back to the original text, the books, the lost books of the Nag Hammadi library, or the Red Sea Scrolls, or ancient writings from the indigenous groups here in North and South America, or in Asia, the early versions of Buddhism, even the today's versions of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism, they all acknowledge various forms of this truth. It's when you go through hundreds of revisions through thousands of years of people editing and re-editing these documents that you lose the fundamental truth and the simplicity of all this. So, all to say that the fundamental foundational nature of many of these religions are based on the same truths that I speak of today through the way of the inner child. And those are incorporated still to some aspect, to some degree, in various books, various philosophies that are still being taught today. Okay? The truth is the truth no matter where it comes, as long as you see it from its authentic viewpoint and not from hundreds of years of edits and re-edits from other people's delusional ways of seeing the world. Okay, so that's it. Ideally, I answered that one. I'm not looking at the chat, sorry guys, because I don't have the chance to do that unless I'm going to get sort of sidetracked. Okay. All right. So number 8. Okay. Whew, does anybody need some water here? All right. I recently encountered the concept of luge, L-O-O-S-H, a term applied to energy produced by human beings that other entities use to feed. In your view, why was fear and all of its sub-programs so necessary in 3D? Wow. Great question. All of these have been great questions, by the way. Okay. Very, very great questions. I'm going to try to answer this in the best, simplest way that I can. Okay. In the realms that we exist in. Okay. So I got to stop here. Okay, I got to stop here and kind of draw a picture for you. All right, you know, like an hourglass, right? You've seen those I mean, you've seen the tiny ones, but like the real big hourglasses. All right, when you look at them, a very tiny little bit of that sand comes through that little spigot. Okay, I mean, really tiny. I mean, I was looking at an hourglass about a week ago, right? Like, because that's what I do. I just get lost in an hourglass. Okay. But I had never seen a real full-fledged hourglass. But okay, I'm going to go off on a tangent there. But I was looking to see if it was working because I couldn't see anything come down that little spigot. And so what does an hourglass and me being absorbed by an hourglass have to do with illusion and fear? In the world that we come from, the worlds that we come from, outside of this 3D world, okay? This 3D world that we exist in, this game that we exist in, playing this game, is like one of those little grains of sand that are coming through this really tiny little spigot, okay? And you have this whole stuff up in the top, meaning that it's a very tiny aspect of who we are as consciousness, as God, okay? And so in all of that immensity that is us outside of this game, there are so many different games being played. So many, okay? So many, all right? They exist outside of this thing we call heaven, okay? Those are dimensions. This is like in and of itself, these games are built within the dimensions to give people different experiences. But 3D is like one of the main dimensions for these types of experiences. Outside of this realm of 3D and outside of this game, of contrast and duality. There are really very few places, especially as you move up the dimensional ladder, that actually have this thing called fear involved. Okay, fear outside of 3D does not have a name. It doesn't have a name. None of this stuff has names. Okay, we are we are just we are just light beings. We are just colors. We are just sounds. We are music. It's hard to explain this because we're so enamored with us being bodies that we don't have a sense that we are not about. The body is just a little vessel inside a little game, inside this dimension of 3D that we play in. We don't experience things like fear unless we add them into these games. And then we go through these experiences to experience some form of lesson, or some, I don't want to call them lessons, but opportunities for growth. Okay. Because fear does not exist in any manner the way it exists here. Okay. By the way, just to get back to this whole thing about dark energies and stuff like that, which it drives me a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, is that when you get into 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 15D, okay, the realms that we supposedly experience a lot of the semi-god demonic energy and stuff of dark energies and black magic and stuff. It can't exist up there because physics alone will tell you that the higher you go in consciousness, the more you're going to actually lighten your energy, and these are heavier energies. Okay, all right. So what does this have to do with luge, you're saying? Okay, get to the point, Franco, all right? The point is that for fear to happen, I mean, for us to experience what we are not, we create these games. And in these games, we create things like fear. And fear is a new frequency. It's a different type of frequency. But it has to be a frequency that we experience and that we're capable of mastering before we're allowed to bring that frequency into a higher level of consciousness where we can play with it. How's that? Because we have to understand and control fear, which is a very 3D energy of illusion. We have to control it here where it can do the most damage, if you will, and know that we can do it when we don't even know who we are. See, that's the beauty of this game. It's one thing to to expose ourselves to this thing called fear as, say, more like a demigod or God, like an awareness that we're already that. It's one thing to do that. It's another thing to start at the lowest level of what you believe you are, which is nothing, and then try to figure yourself out in terms of who you are, and to try to do it within the context of this thing called fear. I mean, it's a big, big obstacle to climb. That if you can do that and master that in 3D, then you can bring that new flavor into 4 and 5 and 60 and beyond. You can create new worlds and new universes with it because it becomes a flavor. It becomes mixed in with all the other emotions that simply create. There's no label to it. But up until now, it hasn't really existed beyond a game. Not in this manner. Not where you have forgotten everything that you are. And in doing that, you have created new worlds through your imagination based on both love and fear and all these other emotions, but they're all blended into something beautiful at that point. This is a new consciousness we're creating. And it's because of that, it is really, really a tough game to play. But that's why we have fear, because we don't have that flavor right now in the way that it exists here, and how to blend it up there, meaning in the pure sources of what we are as just energy. Okay, it doesn't exist. And we're constantly trying to create new ways to grow. There is nothing that we are here to do to learn. Okay, we are here to grow and experience. So that's why we use fear. Now, the other part of that question was about entities that use, I guess, luge, a term applied to energy produced by human beings that other entities use to feed. Okay, that has to do with a lot of the energy that's here right now. Okay, a lot of the energy that's here right now that is very abusive. Okay, and I've talked about this, which is the predatorial energies. Now, I really, 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 really want to make a distinction here between the predatorial energies and this thing that we like to use to label everything, which is narcissism. Okay. This is for a much longer discussion, but I will tell you that much of what we call narcissism today is really based off of lineage and predatorial energies that are feeding off of other energies, more divine light energies. And that's what's causing a lot of the disruption. That's what's causing a lot of the chaos right now, because those energies are coming up to the surface for the reasons that I told you earlier on. Okay. But we have to understand what those energies are and how to remove them, because pretty much every one of us has those energies. Now, either we are using them to attract those energies into our field, and then we get basically used as feed. Okay, we are the ones that our energy gets absorbed into them, or we are using it to as predatorial energies to try to attract others with light energy, and we feed off of them. Okay, I will say that in almost all instances, everybody has the bug, so to speak, the viral energy of the predatorial energy. And that causes a lot of this unfortunate arrangement where other people are feeding off of it, and sometimes in a very harmful, and most of the time is in a very harmful way. This is a big topic that I can't spend a lot of time on, but I do want to tell you that that concept, whatever you want to call it, does exist. Okay. And it does exist, and it is our responsibility to understand it. When I say our responsibility, I mean at least the group of the people in this community, because I see the community as a group of, again, light beings that are of an extraordinarily high level. And I was fumbling and stumbling with my words earlier, but I see that most, if not all, of the community is based off of beings that are angelics. I don't know why that was slipping my tongue at the beginning, but that's what we are for the most part. There might be some dimensional as well, which I would call the galactics, but we are responsible for helping to cleanse that energy from our own grid system and to help others cleanse it for themselves and for others around them. Because that energy is rising to the surface because of all of this other energy, beautiful energy that needs the room to push that stuff out. And that's also part of the lineage energy. But I hope I answered at least enough to help you understand why fear is necessary in 3D. If you didn't, this game wouldn't exist. It's like, why create a game then? If the nature of the game is to have an experience of contrast and duality, and you're supposed to try to figure it out, and within the context of you being told that you're nothing, that's a hell of a game to me. And so it helps us to not only have an enjoyable experience. I know some of you are going, hey, this ain't enjoyable, but it really actually is when you get out of this world. It also helps to grow worlds and realities and dimensions that don't, aspects of dimensions that don't exist now. And then this whole illusion energy is part of the whole feeding frenzy that's going on, that is going nutso right now, especially with the divine masculine, but also not divine masculine, the distorted energies of the divine masculine and feminine. Okay, so ideally that's what I got for you right now on that. That's a whole different, it's a whole big topic that we can talk hours and hours and hours about. I do a fair amount of this stuff in my shamanic work. So, okay. All right, where are we at? What is that? 2:18. So we got maybe a couple more questions. Again, folks, if your questions on your chat are not being addressed, please send those to Maya, and we'll include them in the next Interflow Live. I promise we will get to them. Even if the list gets to be 100 questions, we'll get to them, because we're just going to pick 10 or 15 or 20 at one time. We'll try to answer them as best as we can. Okay. So what would you say to those of us who've had significant trauma in this life? That's question number 9. Okay. What about those people? I say that you guys are I'm going to use this word very loosely, okay? Because I'm not I try to be very, very careful about the words, but I'm going to be a little bit, what do you want to call it? For those of you who've had a lot of trauma in your life, all right, bravo. You guys are the elite of the elite of the elite of the elite in the angelic world. What do I mean by that? I mean that when you came here to this game, which is already complicated as it is, and you a la carte your experience, because you are the one that a la cartes this experience, okay? Meaning that you get to choose what levels in this game you are playing in. But because you guys, most of you guys, if not all of you guys, are angelics, okay? Because of that, angelics are like the highest levels of energy or spiritual beings in the realms of consciousness. They come directly from source, for people who aren't familiar with the angelics, okay? In some religions, they're called seraphims and other beings, okay? Because you guys are who you are, you guys and you guys in this game are the teachers, are the ones that created the structure of this game and the teachings of this game, and are the ones that are helping guide directly or indirectly the ones who are graduating from this school. Because you are the best of the best of the best, you're not going to come into this world and go, I want to have a life where I have absolutely no trauma or drama. Everything's beautiful. I get everything I desire. I'm wealthy. I'm healthy. I'm in love with everybody, and everybody loves me. You're not going to get that. You're going to go, give it to me, and give it to me hard. Because I am one of the ones that created this architectural structure of this game. And it wasn't the architectural structure, then I implemented a lot of the details inside of this game. I'm going to play in the game that I helped create in the highest manner that I can create it, because I am that good. I'm the one that created the game, so I better be good. I have to go through the traumas and the dramas. Because in doing that, I will be able to clearly put out a blueprint to all the other ones who are going to come after me, who are going to ascend out of here. I'm going to create that blueprint, the how not to do things and the how to do things, in order for you to make it easier to ascend out of here. It's like a college or university professor at the highest level that decides to do something within their own, say, theories or practical, whatever they're creating, and they decide to be the guinea pig themselves, okay? And go into that and experience it in the utmost highest levels of drama and trauma, okay? But that doesn't mean that the ones who are going through the school itself, which I would equate to like, not kindergartners, for sure not kindergartners, but like middle schoolers or higher schools, like here in the States, high schoolers, okay? They're not going to go through all of that. And even if they were to go through all the traumas like you have, they're not going to have to go through them in the way that you are going through them in order to wake up. They're going to have blueprint after blueprint after blueprint of ways in which to help them. Because every time somebody remembers and experiences their awakening and remembrances and achieves a higher level of consciousness, every time one of those people do that, they will give that information to everybody else who's playing that game through the law of entanglement. It goes through the field, and it becomes aha moments for people who are playing the game in their version of the games everywhere. Okay? So in other words, you are making it easier for those others to get through to the top of the mountain, because you paved the way. So bravo to you. Bravo to you. Now, your dilemma, if you want to call it that, is that you're going to have to teach yourself, remind yourself is the better way of saying it, how to use that to help you wake up. And the fact that you are here listening to me, or part of the community and listening to others talk about it, or maybe doing the coursework or whatever it is, the fact that you're doing that is because you had those traumas and dramas. You had them. You would not be here. I promise you, I've told this to so many people. You would not be here right now, this very moment, right now, listening to me, if you did not have those traumas and dramas. You would not have. You would be out there asleep, most likely. Or even if you were trying to wake up, you would still be fumbling and stumbling a lot with just the first early stages of it. So for those of you who have had traumas and dramas, again, I say bravo, because you are the trailblazers. Use those traumas and dramas now as a way in which to celebrate the fact that you have arrived at this place right now where you're going to remember who you are. And you don't have to physically die to do it. So bravo. Bravo. That's my answer. Okay? And I can say that because if you read my book, I'm there with you. I've been there with you. I've had moments with you. I wrote that book, the Closet Spiritualist, because I could have easily just gotten right to the teachings, but I didn't do that. I wrote half of that book to show you guys that I went through the same thing. I did. I did. I suffered, if you want to call it that. I had my suicidal tendencies and moments. I had depression. I had a lot of the things that you've gone through. A lot. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what you chose to do here, was to be the light. The light. That's why you're called the children of the light. So bravo. Okay. Woo. That could have been the last question, but I'm going to take one more. Okay. I'm going to have to skip. That's a big one. How often, excuse me, I'm reading this. How often are we in our human identity while on the other side to play with humans we knew and loved here, such as human romantic loves and other humans like siblings? Is it just a choice how often or how long we interact with our human loves once we cross over in our human form, playing with our human loves from here? I will tell you that the amount of time that you are with those that you left here. Okay, so this is going to be a shocker to some people, okay? When you physically die, okay, and I say when, maybe if, okay, because I'm a big believer that we are in this time now where we are not here to die physically to know what we're knowing and talking about right now. But let's say you do physically die. The people that you left here on this planet, in this game, are the very same ones that are going to meet you when you get to the other side. Right? What? Yeah, like I told you, we have to stop looking at ourselves as physical beings. Okay? We are spiritual beings, and we are huge spiritual beings, and we are playing in different facets of this game in different ways. In other words, only a very small droplet of our consciousness energy plays in these games. And so the very ones that you leave here are going to be on the other side waiting for you. And whatever aspect of that consciousness is left in that game, because it's your game, actually comes with you. It's like your dream, right? If you have a dream and you wake up this morning, those people that you were playing with in that dream, they're gone. Okay? But instead of being gone here, they come with you into your sphere, into your heaven, if you will, because they were part of your game. Now, what aspects of them are not, what aspects of them do not choose to come back into this, let's call it this heaven dimension, which is the sixth dimension, that those elements could also integrate into other games where that same person, those same people, those same loved ones are now the primary players in another game, okay? And so that element can choose to then integrate back into those games, okay? And so the question was more specifically, though, how much time or do we get to choose? Yes, we get to choose, and it feels like an eternity if you feel like you have to go through an eternity to be with them. But the fact of the matter is, the moment that you pass on and you get through what's called this integration sort of decompression period, which a lot of NDEers talk about, when you finally go through that period, which is like that, you can choose to stay in that area and be in that form, that 5D form or 4D form or 3D form of a human being. But you will realize that was just a game. I don't need to be there anymore, nor do I have to be there anymore, because the aspects that you are talking about, your romantic aspects and stuff, they're already there. You can have that even outside of your human sense of what you believe you were. This is when I was talking about how when I went into the light, I saw all of these beings, and these beings were my family, and they're called my soul family. And those soul family members play all these different roles in all of these different games. And all I really desire is to be with my soul family, because they're the ones that are playing the games here with me. So you don't really spend a lot of time. Not much time. It does in this 3D world. It may feel like a long time, but you move on pretty quickly and assimilate yourself back into the oneness or the source energy of everything. And you do that just really, really shortly after you walk into 6D energy, which is the heaven energies or nirvana, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. So not very long. Okay. So I started out a little bit slow, got a little bit fumble and stumble on my words and stuff, but ideally I like to thank all of you guys for listening to me. I wasn't anticipating talking, but I appreciate these questions. I appreciate you willing to listen and integrate with them however you desire to integrate with them. And again, for those of you who didn't get your questions answers, they will be on the top of the list going to the next Inner Flow Live, and that's how we will do it. So thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to share this Saturday with you, or Sunday, wherever you are. And the next couple of weeks, months ahead with the supermoons are going to be intense. There's going to be a lot of changes going on. Your grid systems are going to explode, meaning that your awareness is going to heighten. Do not take it personally. Know that your body is starting to be upgraded, both your light body and your crystalline base body that is now starting to develop is all going to be changing. Okay? Take care, as they would say, as Maya and others would say, ciao, adios in Spanish, arrivederci. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.